Hello. So today we got something a bit more advanced for you guys. As I'm recording this, I haven't uploaded like a proper Minecraft video that wasn't a stream in I don't want to think about how long, but this is something that's come up quite a bit in some of the things that we've been doing, and I felt like it'd be worth sharing because I feel like this would be useful to a lot of people. So before I get into any of the redstone, and it is fairly intricate and complex, that's why I laid it out the way I did, what this is very simply an input for a storage room or anything where you're putting in a massive amount of items, and this makes it so that it's a lot less laggy on your overall system, and it also filters out shulker boxes. So instead of just staring out into that, I'm going to go onto the dark Minerva world because I didn't think to set it today. This is where we use this. So this is all just a big storage room, fairly run-of-the-mill as things go, but I'll link it below if you guys want to check this out in much further detail. I go into all of it, but I never really showed exactly how to build this thing, and I'm not even going to lie to you, I can't remember if I even showed how this works, but that's mostly what this video will be today. I'm going to be skipping the block-by-block tutorial, but I'm going to explain in depth how it works, what each of these colored circuits are, and I'll be providing the world download for you guys to check out on your own. Because the basis of thought here is this is not something simple. This isn't something that someone would just whip together. You really shouldn't need a system like this unless you've got a full-fledged sorting system. So it's only people who I'd imagine know how to download worlds who would actually kind of need a system like this, so I don't think a block by block should be necessary. But I'll explain in short, and then I'll get into further detail later, what all these components are and what exactly they do. So the red component filters out shulker boxes, and the blue circuit unloads the shulker boxes, as simply as I can put it. And then all of those items get filtered into this main dropper, which then gets regulated by the gray circuit. The gray circuit has an observer clock right here, which is a lot easier on your system than a typical comparator clock, which would have been a big win if we didn't require a comparator clock to filter out the shulker boxes. Nevertheless, this counts out a group of items, so they all stop right up on top of this piston right down here, which is the one with the packed ice on it. That extends, grabs the items, and it lets them group together. That way you have, say you're grouping to 10 items, okay, which is fairly small. Usually we do 13 to 15. Say you're grouping to 10 items and you're sorting a ton of items. Say you're sorting something like you're sorting my Emma stone here. Say that's going to the very end of the storage room. So those items, those andesite is what that block is, will be going through this sorting system for a very long time. Just to throw out a number, we would probably have about 400 or 500 diorite entities or andesite entities at any given time going through this system. That's fairly normal for a larger storage room that's spread out like this one is, but 400 entities is a lot of performance hit. That does a lot to your CPU and whatever server you're playing on. In fact, the old Minerva server with the Ruby Center actually got shut down by our provider because they didn't like 3,000 hoppers for some reason. I don't know why. Something about lagging other servers. But to cut down on this lag, the grouping of the items does a ton because it turns that 400 items into 40 stacks of 10, or you can even cut that number with diminishing returns. You can cut it down further and further with every bigger stack that you get. Like I said, we stack to about 13 or 15 on Minerva. I'm not even sure what it is. I could actually check for you because this will come up later. This dropper is what regulates it, so it's this number times 2 plus 1. So you can see that we're actually sorting to stacks of 13 here, which I'm not going to do the math, but you guys can see that that's a lot less entities. 40 is way better than 400. I've talked to people with crappy computers. I've had everybody on Minerva test this out, and everybody was in agreement that this is a lot. They wouldn't even know it's sorting. Many times I've logged in here just to check this system out because this input alone is something so complicated that I've honestly forgotten how it works over the years, and partially why I'm not doing the block by block tutorial because it confuses me, but I've had to refer to this world many times. So when I've logged in and it's been sorting the storage room, when I've logged in and the storage room has been sorting, I wasn't even aware of it. So that's kind of how much of an impact that makes. And then lastly, the yellow circuit is just a failsafe. Theoretically, you're only really using that for 3 reasons. Either this hopper backs up, the main dropper backs up, and if either of those are full, the system will break. So, or at least with this dropper, things will start to break, because once this hopper is full and items start backing up into this dropper, they start going into the shulker box, and it just confuses everything. It's very, very bad for that to happen to the system. Worst case scenario, items will actually start going through this hopper into your dispenser. And while this system can sort normal items instead of shulker boxes, the clock that triggers this is significantly slower and will clog things up quite a bit. And that's actually why we have the water in here. Again, this will come up later. That's for TNT. Yeah, if you play on a server with a lot of people and not everybody designed this system, you know, things happen, okay? TNT happens. I got a video link below of exactly that. Our storage room blew up because lag, people unloaded it, whatever. TNT got into this dispenser, and that's why we have water. So I've tested that pretty rigorously. It should be completely safe. And then the third situation is when the shulker box actually, the shulker box unloader triggers this yellow line to stop flow from the main dropper. That way it prioritizes the shulker boxes so they can do their deal. Then it starts filtering items again, just so we can avoid that issue. So we've got the water, the yellow circuit, and order of operations, which is kind of the yellow circuit again, all preventing TNT from getting into that dispenser. If it wasn't for TNT, I think we could skip out on a lot of the redstone here, but the comfort in a storage room is allowing for absolutely any item to be able to go through it without any problem at all. And, well, that's why we have that. So now we're in the tutorial world. This is what I'll link below. This is what you guys can download in full. This, I think, will be really, really helpful. Like I said, I don't think you'll need a block by block if you just follow what I show you here. But, you know, this will be an awesome resource. So just to show that, I wanted to give you guys a look at that. Let's check out the patron server, which is a server you guys can join by joining as a member on YouTube, or $5 a month with my Patreon link below. You guys can actually get on the server and play with us. Yeah, that's a massive plug, but I did build this. So this is a totally different storage room. I'll link this one below if you're curious, but that's not the topic of today's video. This is where I actually built this item input exactly as I'll show you guys today. And I'll explain a couple of key things like why this piston pushes up. A little bit of an editor's note here. It turns out I never actually did explain what the piston does, but it's something I wanted to talk about simply because it'll show you guys that this torch right here is what turns off and tells you that the system is running. So if you want anything to happen while the system is sorting, this torch is what you pull from, and that's what this piston's doing. It triggers a comparator fader simply because that torch does turn off when it's swapping from a shulker box back to normal items, and it just turns on these lights whenever it's filtering. That way I can throw in items and run around through here and do whatever, but as long as these lights are on, I know that items are sorting, or they were sorting all of, you know, like I said, the fader goes off after a few seconds, so it's got a little bit of a safety there. But if these lights are on, effectively the system's sorting. And that's because, and it's not a problem of the redstone, but if you guys ever leave the area and you come back right as a hopper's supposed to grab an item, it doesn't always work as it should. So if you have an overflow, like you should, it'll pick up items that should have gotten sorted simply because you unloaded the area. So it's good to have something like that, and or to just stay in the area while it's filtering. But if you're okay with throwing things back through the system, then that's not a problem. And why I built it like this, and etc., etc. And it'll basically start from the very beginning, which is where I showed you in the tutorial world. I already had the water stream in place. If you were to build this on your own, I would highly recommend figuring out where you're going to put your items first. That is step number one. I decided I wanted them up here. This doesn't matter to you guys, but for, you know, I decided to put my items up here, and then I built in the hopper storage. This is all just backup storage for when I do a massive sorting job, and then it goes into the main system, and then it does everything it needs, because it'll be a lot easier for you guys to build this top down. That's just personal experience talking here. So long as you figure out where your chest is going to be, wherever this dropper ends up, then you can build your item stream. Item streams are very easy in 1.13, and the only thing required to make this system work is the piston having a packed ice block or an ice block or whatever. I don't actually think you need ice in 1.13, but items get pushed up and whatever. Make this packed ice. These two absolutely do need to be blue ice though, because the water gets cut off and things slide around. If this isn't blue ice, things can get stuck under this half slab. And to quell any fears, in my experience, nothing can get stuck under this half slab. I have run something like 30,000 items through these systems collectively. Never once have I ever seen anything get stuck here with blue ice. So you should be 100% confident there. If it is possible for an item to get stuck, it's got to be about 1 in 50,000 from what I've seen. And then the rest of this doesn't need to be packed ice with 1.13 plus mechanics, but you know, it's the old ways inside. I mean, what can I do? So now starting on the actual build guide, let's get into what you actually need to do. As I said, you should definitely figure out your storage. You can see, just to kind of give you an example, what I did on the patron server there was a little bit something like this, and then that's kind of how I, led into things. It was basically this, but you want to have your one chest right off the bat. That'll be leading into a dropper facing sideways into a shulker box, and then you'll have this red clock behind it. So the only thing you'll really need to know in terms of how it actually works is it tries to shoot every item into a shulker box, and then it unlocks the, that should actually be, sorry about that. I actually fixed it on every other spot but this one. The redstone should be facing up and into the block that the comparator sits on, and then that'll actually lock the hopper just long enough to filter out any shulker boxes. So the shulker boxes go down into the shulker box unloader, and then every single item goes through to the gray circuit. And as for the redstone on this, it's pretty straightforward. It's basically a simple comparator clock. You need to have any item to update this. This could be a note block or a piston. I think those are the only two blocks, but a rail works perfectly fine, or an activator rail would work too. But the only thing you really need to know is this furnace needs to have 42 items in it. I don't think it's any more or any less. You need 42 items just to extend the circuit just long enough. And this is made to be as lag friendly as it can be. I haven't found a way to filter shulker boxes any better than this. And I know blinking dust is the bane of FPS when it comes to storage rooms. So this is always powered just kind of to help alleviate that issue. But once this overpowers it with a shulker box, it'll actually go through and filter it out properly. Next, you're going to want to build a shulker box unloader. So I guess it's fair to say now, if you guys are in a situation where you don't want to filter shulker boxes, you totally don't need the blue or the red circuit. Again, this is supposed to be the final solution to any sorting system that you make, so there's no reason that you shouldn't build these, but I figured I should share that anyway. This is my TNT-proof shulker box unloader. This has its dedicated video. I'll link it below if you guys want to check it out on its own when it's not kind of fitted to this rig, because I made it work in here really well. I'm actually really happy with how the redstone worked out. It's pretty dense as a normal design, but I was able to fit it in here really well. And I actually added a command block for you guys right here where you can click this and it'll make all of the blocks invisible because some of them are completely impossible to see. So like that comparator that's snuck away in there, I think it's right there or right there. There's 4 of them in there that you really can't see well unless you just make them all invisible like so. So that's a nice little toggleable option for you guys. Simply put, it's a system where whenever it's off, it just powers this torch. But if you turn it off, it should be pulsing just like so. And then it'll constantly be trying to spit out a shulker box into that water stream. And then once it's detected to have shulker boxes in it, it'll turn this off. And then it'll just sort of drain out from this main input. And that's kind of how this whole system works. Like I said, that has a dedicated video where it'll explain in more detail, and you guys can check that out in the link below. But I'm going to move on. And you guys can check that out in the link below. And this does need to be a half slab because later on we will have a piston kind of congruent to this or adjacent to this where you don't want to interrupt it. But that's basically that. So to explain this in detail, this is tricky because like I said, this is one of the parts of this build that really had me at a loss when I was trying to remember everything. But this top comparator reads the output from the dispenser and then that triggers the whole shulker box unloader. This comparator reads from the actual shulker box and then it triggers this line. So this torch will be off as long as there are other shulker boxes in it. And then this will turn on to send the pulse to send it a new shulker box. This bottom comparator is what actually turns the system off. So this goes down and underneath. These could have been the same thing. This comparator and this comparator basically do the same job, but it was really tough with the way the redstone worked out to kind of isolate its signal. So I have a second comparator down here running below, and if I actually turn this back on, it'll be easier to see. This leads straight into the failsafe. You can see that it is just marked right there. We'll build the rest of that in the final step. And then this last comparator is something that you wouldn't really know is necessary until you've ran the system for a while. So honestly, I think I built this entire system in full on my Nerva, and we've been running it for a while before I realized that something like this was necessary. Because the way that this works is there's actually supposed to be a piston back there that I completely forgot in all versions of this build, so I'm going to replace it while I'm talking here. There's a piston that pushes towards us right here, and that breaks the shulker box. And this hopper ends up picking up all of them. Pretty much every single shulker box, and they start to back up inside of this, and then sooner or later you've got shulker boxes just despawning on top of this. So whenever that hopper actually reads an item, this will overpower this and force the clock to stop long enough for the hopper to flow through the main system and get shot out by the main dropper. As soon as this hopper is empty, and it all happens pretty quick, it'll actually extend this piston up or retract the piston downward and start the clock all over again. So that's, again, just another little bit of a, I guess you could say, a I guess you could say it's a fail-safe, and that just sort of allows for your shulker boxes to not get wasted. And then we get to the fun part. So this is basically just the main clock and probably one of the highlights of this whole build, and that's the item grouper. The item grouper alone, as I mentioned right off the bat, is probably the inspiration for this entire project. The Shulker Box Unloader was just part of it. Again, when you play on a server with a lot of people and everybody's as lazy as I am, you just want to throw in your whole inventory and you don't want to have a separate input for Shulker Boxes. But part of a huge motivator for this entire system was this item grouper. So you can see it down here. Actually, I should have put a glass block here. There's a piston that kind of faces up. And you can see it'll start grouping items just like so. They all just kind of sit up inside of that block, and then when it pulls down, the items flow through, and then they go right underneath that little half slab. And this is really nice. And this water stream right here is actually kind of optional. You don't technically need this, but by facing it into the side just like this, it'll help group up any items that didn't quite get put together. Now, this isn't 100% perfect. Plenty of items go through this system and never actually get grouped together. They kind of slide to the edge of the block. But I never really considered that to be a problem. It's really not that big of a deal. It could be fixed if you went ahead and put soul sand on this block, or perhaps like literally any other block besides packed ice where they wouldn't slide as far. I haven't tested it with that, but I've never felt it was necessary. Grouping up about 95% of the items felt like plenty. So long as it got put into one group just like so, it was a lot better. And then, of course, this dropper right here is where your control is for how many items you want in a stack. This can be, like I said, 5 or 6. It doesn't really matter so long as you stay under the magic number of about 20. So if you build a basics filter just like this, these are seen everywhere. It works just like so. You want to send less items than it would take to overflow this. So you can see this will stack up to 23 items before it overflows. So if you got that thing sending stacks of 50, your single item filters won't actually be able to pick anything up. And even 20 items is cutting it pretty close. Even though this thing does send at 9,000 items an hour at the perfect speed for a hopper to pick it up, Minecraft's not a perfect game, and it's just not exactly... It's not ideal, okay? It bugs out sometimes. I usually try to stay under 20. Like I said, diminishing returns kick in pretty hard at this point, so the difference between 13 and 20 items in an overall stack is not a lot of items. And the difference between, 20 and 34 entities is so minute that I don't think anybody would ever complain about 14 entities. So it's better to just be on the safe side of this, and that's why I went for, I think there are 5 or 6 items in here. It's not exactly the most important thing. You can actually remove that, but yeah. So lastly, we got the failsafe, and that's probably the easiest one to implement. To actually show this going back one step, I have this furnace here. It's empty for now, but it will be used in the failsafe, which is right over here. So basically, we have a block leading out from the main dropper for the entire system, and this comparator will turn on as soon as it's full. So basically, this furnace is completely full of items. You have to use an item that can be used as a fuel and a thing. On Minerva, I think I used a stone block or something. I don't even remember what I did, but 2 stacks of coal works completely fine. If you guys have any other alternatives, you guys can put them in the chat, but it doesn't really matter to me. You can put 2 things that can't cook, so it doesn't, terracotta, coal, whatever. Point is, it needs to be full. Yeah, that could be anything, honestly. You do a full dropper or anything that can have a dust on it that a comparator can read out if you insist on not using a furnace. But basically, because that's full, this comparator will only turn on if the main dropper is full. And as I said earlier, if that main dropper is full, you've probably got a problem in the system, and that's why the system will not necessarily turn itself off, but it'll lock this hopper so the main dropper can't actually get items anymore. And that's all that'll do. And then, of course, you need to put a comparator to read out from this hopper, because if this is ever full of anything that's not shulker boxes, this is a problem. And as long as something's leading through this, you're going to want that to be off, just because shulker boxes have priority in this system. And then, of course, if you built everything appropriately, this comparator should lead straight into this block right here, which I never felt that anything other than this blue circuit required that, invisibility switch. But for the yellow circuit, it does get a little dense in there. However, the only thing that you're really not able to see is this torch underneath here. So basically, both repeaters on this side and this side are leading into this torch up here. And that leads into this block right here. It's really simply just that. And then that is very, very simple torch going up into the main hopper. And that should be it. I hope I explained this in well enough detail. Like I said, it is a pretty intricate little thing. I designed this, I don't even know how long ago, whenever I designed the Minerva storage room, which would have been December, so 7, 8 months ago now. And I kind of took a big break from Minecraft between building that and this. So I also want to give big thanks to Fibro. I usually don't shout people out, and he had a pretty small but impactful hand in this, and he decided to build the exact same storage room we built on Minerva, and is actually the same one the patrons built as well. I obviously went a different route with my personal rig. This storage room right here is exactly the one Fibro is setting up, and as I understand it, he didn't really have an input for it because, like I said, I never really explained how to build this item input here. And it's fun for me to make this video because on the one hand, you can just shoot items from a dropper into an item stream, right, Beast? Well, you know, it gets complicated quick. As soon as you want to filter shulker boxes, you need a whole circuit for that. Then you need a whole circuit to unload them. And then item grouping, as I've said many times, has its huge benefits. So it was basically Fibro who inspired me to finally make this video, because I sent him a world download before even recording this, just so he could have something to work off of. And of course, you guys can download that in the link below. If I missed anything, comment below, or preferably join our Discord. I will answer in the comments, but YouTube doesn't always notify me when I get replies to my replies. So if you really want to have a good dialogue and or send screenshots, the technical Minecraft section in the Minerva Discord is fantastic for this. I'd be happy to help, or if anybody around who knows this design can help, they'll help as well. So, oh, and side note, if you build this, screenshots are awesome. I'm not even kidding. Like, it's just kind of like a be nice to your teacher kind of thing. Oh, I feel like such a, ugh. My point is, like, when I get screenshots of people who actually use this stuff, it really does make my day. And like I said, I had my reservations of making this video because this was something so niche. I don't know that too many people might end up building this, but if you do, let me know. It'd make my day. Thank you guys for watching, and see ya. Oh, and thanks to my patrons. These guys support my channel every month, and the guys on the screen are on the $5 tier, and they're actually on the patron server, so I game with these guys pretty often. If you guys want to be a part of those streams, you guys should join up with that link. Also, there are some recommended videos here you can check out. See you guys.